New You Life is the hormone health company developing transformative products that challenge the way you age. The Pulse features rising stars, leaders in the field, and insights from our leaders at headquarters. Each Pulse podcast is designed to help you become the best version of yourself by keeping you dialed in, inspired, and motivated. Are you ready to be the best you? Now, let's listen to the Pulse of New You Life.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Pulse podcast. I am Chanai, your host, the Scientific Advisory Board Coordinator, and we have a special guest today, esteemed Scientific Advisory Board member, nurse practitioner Lacy Nasseh. Thank you for being with us today.
Yes, thank you. I'm so privileged to be here and so excited to be here on the Pulse podcast.
I'm so excited as well. I'm so excited to actually have this conversation with you because we talk about this all the time. It's like one of those things, that we just talk about, and it's a really nice organic conversation. And I know that you are an expert in women's health, and so this is perfect for talking about all the transformative things that are going on after you have a baby. So this is great for all you new moms out there, or anyone that is, looking to have babies, and then for the dads out there too, just so that you get a better understand of what's going on with women after having a baby, because there's so much that's happening, not just on a physical level, but emotionally too, right? So we'll be delving into all of the changes, physical changes, emotional, and I'm just trying to give some guidance to the women out there on how to navigate through that time. And you just had a baby. Well, not just had a baby, but you did just have a baby not too long ago, right, Lacy?
Yes, I feel like I just had a baby. I had a baby about 18 months ago, and I'm very passionate about this subject and topic. And I know, Chanai, you are too, because I think childbirth, it impacts so many women. We know that women, for example, make up almost about 50% of the population, 49.6% to be exact worldwide per the CDC. Wow. And about 80% of those women end up having a baby in their lifetime. So we're talking about a large proportion of women who are impacted by childbirth and all of the transformative, like you said, changes that happen with that. So something that I think is definitely deserves a space to be discussed.
I agree. And I don't know if, this may be a whole nother podcast, but, we frequently talk about with postpartum in general, it's a difficult time because there's a lot of focus on the phase when you're pregnant. There's just everyone's super attentive, and it's like, let's make sure baby's good. And then, after you have the baby, it's kind of like this 3-month time frame that they say, okay, and so now, it's time to go back to work, and, you're supposed to be all as well. And it's completely different. It's definitely outside of that 3-month time frame. Because we know that postpartum can last for up to 24 months, they say, right?
Yes. So I love that you bring up this point because, if anyone who's been out there who's been pregnant knows that, insurance covers these visits that start monthly in the first trimester, and then they start becoming a little bit more regular, and towards the end of pregnancy are actually weekly, every 2 weeks to weekly, and, based on how you're doing in your pregnancy. And then postpartum, there's one visit, just one. And it's just not enough time to be spent with your provider to discuss concerns, because your whole life changes. It really, truly changes your life. Everything about postpartum, like you said, the emotional aspect of it, the physical, physiological, what our hormones are doing. There are so many things about postpartum, and it really can extend far beyond 12 weeks. And hopefully there will be more research in the future that supports that.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And speaking of physical changes, what are some of those physical changes that women can expect outside of the fact that you've just birthed a whole human and you have a completely different body than what you had pre-baby? But yeah.
Definitely. So some of the physiological or physical changes that commonly women will talk about after pregnancy.
Mhm.
Um, First of all, to kind of before I kind of dive into that,
Yeah.
I always kind of like to talk about, some of our major sex hormones, those being specifically estrogen and progesterone. When
Mhm.
we're pregnant, those really surge and get to extremely high levels. In fact, there's some great data that shows that even the amount of estrogen during just one pregnancy in your life is
Mhm.
more estrogen than you would produce in an entire lifetime while not
Wow.
being pregnant. So
Yep.
so when you think about those hormones, specifically estrogen and progesterone,
Mhm.
surging during pregnancy, and there are more hormones than that, of course, but those are two
Right.
major ones that we talk about. You think about, well, what happens after you have your baby, and then they plummet and decline. So just with this tremendous peak of hormones, this inevitable plummet happens. And that plummet tends to be referred to as the mini menopause. So in the postpartum
Wow.
period, things like hot flashes, night sweats, hair loss, metabolism changes, mood swings, insomnia, sleep disruptions. Those are some
Mhm.
really common physical changes that a lot of women report experiencing after pregnancy. And, it's important to talk about how those happen, why those happen, and how we can manage them. So, just as I was saying, this huge surge of hormones happens to support our growing fetus, to support the growth and development of our baby. And then as these hormones surge and then plummet, like I said, after having your baby in the postpartum period, we are kind of smacked with this onslaught of symptoms. And again,
Mhm.
a lot of that is largely due to hormonal fluctuation. So something that's super important to talk about and prepare women for. And again, we're so focused on the pregnancy, as you said,
Yeah.
during the time, obviously, that we're pregnant, but we don't talk about, okay, what about after and preparing for a support system and how we're going to get back on track with just the way that we feel in our bodies, because it can be a
Right.
shock to all of us, no matter, how privy you are and how educated you are in the healthcare field. I think it can take us all by surprise what it does to our bodies.
Mhm.
So again, I know we were kind of talking about that 12 weeks postpartum period is typically what's referred to as the postpartum period, but um,
Yeah.
and it can extend far, far beyond that. And so, some of the things that I really like to touch on, two specific things, because I think that they impact our everyday life in so many ways, and that
Mhm.
is weight and sleep. So, like
Yes.
metabolic changes. So, after pregnancy, we know that our metabolism is not the same that it was pre-pregnancy because of the hormonal alterations and this huge plummet in hormones. We tend to have a little bit of a harder time losing weight and just getting back to feeling. And it doesn't have to be all about weight loss, but how can we support our metabolism in a natural way? And how can we kind of reset our bodies and feel how we did before and feel that confidence and that love that we
Yeah.
feel for our baby? How can we be
Yeah.
ourselves again? So, I think that, this kind of leads us into this article I read by the Journal of the American Medical Association, demonstrated that those who sleep less consume and crave higher caloric food. Doesn't mean it's nutrient dense.
Yeah.
Typically, we're grabbing towards something quick, maybe sugary, something
Yeah.
to give us some energy. Uh,
Yeah.
Anyone who's had a baby, including
Yeah.
you, knows we're just
Yes.
like, your brain is not working, it's not functioning the same that would be
Yeah.
pregnancy and then even during
Mhm.
pregnancy. And so the Journal of the American Medical Association said, okay, compared to those who sleep longer periods, so 7 to 9 hours nightly, and those who sleep less, then that are really grabbing towards that food that's not great for us. And then that can lead to all other kinds of changes, like these glucose spikes and spikes in our blood
Right.
sugar, and putting at an increased risk of disease. So really, the sleep
Mhm.
and weight go together in many ways in the postpartum period, because realistically, anyone who's had a baby knows that we don't sleep for a long
No.
time. It's a
I
little,
know. I know,
um,
and as you age too, it's just your sleep just gets it gets different,
it does. It does. It changes. And that's kind of where I always encourage women to look into like doula services or really look at your support system and see what you can do to get that extra support that we all need. Because we need a little break too. Infants typically wake up every 2 to 3 hours nightly for the first 3 to 6 months. Every baby's a little bit different.
Yeah.
But with that being said, even outside of postpartum, a third of Americans don't get 7 to 9 hours nightly. They just don't.
So true.
And we've all been there where we've been like, oh, I did not have a good night's sleep last night. I do not feel well. Like you're just sluggish. Again, you're craving that like Snickers bar or processed foods that you normally would never eat, but you're just like, I just need like an energy boost.
Yes.
Which then is this, toxic cycle of
Yes.
further destroying our energy levels. But you're just like, I need something quick and fast.
Yeah.
And there's another great article that shows that those who don't sleep consistently, that 7 to 9 hours nightly, actually have higher risks of developing diseases like obesity, high blood pressure, diabetes, and heart disease, along other conditions. So I think it's just so important to highlight how can we, knowing all of this, how can we support our sleep and our weight and metabolism and things like that? So New You Life has a couple fantastic products for those mothers who are not nursing. There are 2 wonderful products that I really wanted to talk about while talking about some of these physical changes in the postpartum period. One of them is TriMLT, and that is a product that really leverages the power, as Chanai knows.
I love it. It's so good. It's so good.
It's a great, fantastic product. It really leverages our endogenous hunger hormones that really, ghrelin, leptin, PYY are the 3 that I kind of want to touch on. But ghrelin, for example, that's our like pesky, I like to say gremlin because it reminds me of ghrelin and gremlin.
That's actually a good way to remember.
It helps you remember ghrelin.
That's great.
Pesky hunger hormone.
That's awesome.
Really kicks in the postpartum period when we're not getting that quality sleep. And leptin, on the other hand, is like our appetite suppressor. So it really helps us with satiety, feeling full, not faster, but it helps regulate feeling full and feelings or levels of fullness. And then the PYY hormone is responsible for delaying or slowing the emptying of gastric content. So slowing digestion essentially. And that can help us with signaling satiety and feeling full as well. So the TriMLT formulation that New Life has specifically targets and supports the role of those hormones. And then that ultimately helps balance weight management and hormones. So I love the TriMLT formulation. And then in addition to that, because sleep and weight have so much to do with each other, sleep, we've got the New Life has this amazing Somanite product as well. And Chanai also knows a lot about Somanite.
Yeah. I do.
Yeah, it's a fantastic product. We've talked about it several times, I know, in the Science of Sleep podcast that we had as well. But Somanite really taps into our insulin like growth factor 1, and in addition to that, our HGH, so human growth hormone, to help promote sleep and help us get that restorative sleep quality that we all need. In addition to that, it has collagen in it, which is very helpful with healing. And we really need that, especially in the postpartum period, as our tissues, little by little, those fibers start to heal again. So Somanite and TriMLT are 2 products that I always like to really highlight when we're talking about these physical changes postpartum.
But honestly, too is great. Not to interrupt you, but Somanite is great too because, a lot of times you have these changes in your skin and your hair after. I know for myself, after my babies, I mean, I don't know if my daughter just took all the greatness out of my hair or what, but it's just my hair was not the same, so it would have been awesome to have a product like that. And especially with Somanite, the great thing about Somanite is that it's not just a sleep product, and so you're getting so many other really amazing benefits from it. And then also sleep is such a tricky thing because, and that's probably why there's just so many sleep products out there, because there's some people that, have trouble going to sleep, but not staying asleep. And some people who can go to sleep great, but then, they wake up. So it can be hard to figure out the right sleep product when you don't really know why you're not sleeping.
Exactly.
So for myself, I have trouble staying asleep. I can
Okay.
knock out fast, I can go to sleep, but then I'll wake up in the middle of the night and then I can't go back to sleep. So Soma Night's been really great for that. I don't take it right before bed. I take it like a little bit after dinner. And it's a nice relaxant because I don't know if it's just because I have a busy mind, but I think of all the things at night. So it's nice to just calm down my nervous system
Yep.
and to the point where I can relax and then have a nice restful sleep, which
Yes.
is really good. And it's super convenient type of thing to just be able to take. But yeah, those two, I 100% agree with you. I wish those were around
I
when I
know.
was
Seriously, we all could be able to so
yeah.
many primality in our lives.
Yeah. And I think it's going back to the estrogen thing. I'm glad that you brought that up because that is something that I learned about when I started doing doula work,
Mhm,
and I didn't know about it, but they talked about it a lot in school,
mhm.
about that surge, that estrogen drop that like happens right after, and doctors don't talk about it.
No.
Doctors, it's just not something that's talked about, and it's so essential to know because you, as a person who doesn't understand, especially when it's your first baby,
Oh,
you
yeah.
don't really know why you're feeling what you're feeling. Like, why am I crying? Why am I sad? Or why? It's just so much is happening
Yeah.
on top of the fact that you're caring for a new baby, and then the baby may have colic or
Yes.
whatever else is going on that's causing added stress to your just day-to-day life. And I've noticed just in doula work that there's a lot of women now that are having babies older.
Yes,
You know?
absolutely,
It's
and
happening now, like in their
it
40s,
is.
right?
Yes, and I think there's a lot of reasons behind that, and I think that brings up a really good point in that, when as we get older, as we age, processes, metabolism, hormones, things are different. I mean,
Yeah,
there have been women who are in perimenopause and they're pregnant, right? They've got pregnant and then they are going through this
exactly.
perimenopause transition and these like
Yeah.
crazy hormonal fluctuations are happening. And we know that aging is just a part of life. Okay. But
Mhm.
aging and the older you are having your baby can definitely make it harder on your body to recover and to just know that I think is so important to highlight that. And I think that again we're just so focused on in these visits during pregnancy the health of the baby and screening for genetic disorders and all these things that are great, but we really neglect the postpartum period. And I'm a healthcare professional. I may have known some of the science postpartum, but a lot of the science postpartum, but I didn't know how that would apply to me. And then
Mhm.
going through it was a whole nother experience because it was my first baby. I still was like, yeah, I read something, in a textbook, or in an article, but feeling it and going through it is so different. And you really can't put words to it. You just can't.
No.
But what we can do is help educate and empower other women to seek resources and support and think about that postpartum period because that's really, we have our pregnancy, we have our baby, but then what? It's like we really need to focus on that as well. And I think just like what you said with aging, and women having babies at an older age, it's
Mhm.
important to talk about how we can kind of tap in addition to that, to supporting our hormones as we get older and helping with kind of the anti-aging process. And what does that mean? Okay, there's no fountain of youth.
Right.
Unfortunately. um,
Yeah,
Somaderm is another great product and you
it
like
is.
is it's a proprietary homeopathic ingredient product that may enhance natural growth hormone and support anti-aging. And having a child impacts the body in multitude of ways, as we know. And one
Mhm.
way this great research study showed that women go through cellular and physiological degradation similar to the mechanisms demonstrated in aging. And so we know that having a
Wow.
baby can further kind of perpetuate the aging process, essentially. Um,
Wow.
so,
I
and
did not I didn't know that.
yeah, yeah, I mean, and
That's a fun fact. I did not know.
I came across that and I'm like, I feel it.
Yeah. Oh,
But
100%.
but not knowing that there's actually data to support that, I was like, oh wow, like that's incredible to know that. So Somaderm I love too. That's a transdermal gel that can be used. Again, all in non-nursing moms is what we're recommending, but also always talk to your healthcare provider. We want to make sure that you're doing the best thing for your body. And I just think that I love this conversation, Chanai, because
Me too.
again, I don't think these things are talked about enough. So
I know. I 100% agree with you. I try to find ways to support my mamas the best that I can and just look for different resources and things. But, and it's also, I think for women too, it's hard because you've had a baby and then there's like a self-confidence thing there. You have your
yes.
partner, that, so when it comes to like, sexual activity and feeling sexy,
Oh, yes.
that can change a lot because you just have a completely new body.
It's true.
And it's you kind of put that pressure on yourself to get that old body back, but the body bounce back. It's not always it's not as fast as you think, and especially the more children you have, that bounce back is different. With my first one, I was young. I was 21. I was a dancer in college,
Thriving.
super active. So I was like, I had that baby, and afterwards it was great. But then my second one at 23, I noticed the difference.
Wow. Mhm.
And I also had two cesareans. So I think that there's a lot to say
Mm,
as far as what to expect from your body. There is changes in that recovery process, right? From
absolutely.
having cesareans to having a vaginal birth.
Yes, 100%. And I think this is another topic that, again, we don't talk about enough, but
Yeah.
painful sexual intercourse. Oh my gosh, I'm
Right?
so passionate about talking about vulvar and vaginal health and
Yeah.
how can we support the integrity and the healing and the tissues and the mucosa of our vulva and our vagina, especially after childbirth. So part of that is, okay, we know that our progesterone and estrogen plummet after having a
Mhm.
child.
Mhm.
What does that do to our bodies? The vulva in particular and in the vagina, we have hundreds of receptors for estrogen, and those thrive on estrogen. And once we lose that, and that can be further perpetuated by breastfeeding, we know that our estrogen actually goes down even more when our prolactin goes up to help produce milk,
Mhm.
and for breastfeeding mamas. And vaginal dryness can really lead to pain. And when we, are kind of ready to reestablish that intimacy with our partners, it can be very uncomfortable. And there are so many
Mhm.
options out there as well to help with painful sexual intercourse. Obviously, a discussion that should be tailored with your healthcare provider.
Mhm.
But it's very important to talk about lubrication and how we can naturally, but also, just support our ability to have seamless and fun and good sexual intercourse without feeling pain. And I think that is, again, even with cesarean sections, it's important to talk about it as well, because there's still that hormonal plummet, just
There
because
is.
there's no easy way to get a baby out, whether it's
Yeah.
there's no
Yeah.
easy way. So
Yeah.
major abdominal surgeries. Um,
Right.
and I don't know any other abdominal surgery that, you're just giving your baby and here you go. There's a lot of, take care of
It's
your
the
baby.
hardest thing.
There's no recovery period.
Yeah.
And, I think that it's really important to talk about feeling intimate again. And intimacy doesn't necessarily have to be one thing. It can look different for different people. But it's
Exactly.
very important to talk about pain that can occur with sexual intercourse and how we can really dive into that. There's also pelvic floor physical therapy, and they're a fantastic resource as well with just rehabilitating those pelvic floor muscles that inevitably go through trauma when we go through pregnancy and childbirth. So
Yeah. And to the partners out there, with your ladies that just had babies,
yeah,
love them up.
yes,
Love them up, make them feel beautiful, tell them they look beautiful because you're
so
just it's just a weird time. It's just, I mean, I remember just like, oh my gosh, I love my baby. It's so beautiful. But then I haven't been sleeping and
yeah,
I'm emotional, and this body, I don't feel comfortable in it. Like I want my other, so it's just, there's so many things happening.
yes.
And we try to give ourselves grace, but it's nice when you have that support from your partner as well.
Absolutely.
And that. So talking, I know you mentioned Trimel tea and Somanite as products that are great, which they are. So for women that are breastfeeding, what are some ways that you would suggest for them to just keep up with, nutrition and all of those things,
So
sleep, that type of thing?
yeah, absolutely. So natural ways in which if we're breastfeeding, there are a lot of, contraindications or just things that haven't been, not even contraindications, but things that haven't been studied in women who are pregnant. So we can't necessarily say this works or this is going to be helpful for you because we want to make sure that we're not interfering with with anything going
Mhm.
on as well.
Right.
And so with that being said, nutrition postpartum, I mean, I think it's very important we know that we're going to be sleep deprived. So preparing ahead of time. There's so many resources now, Pinterest, Instagram, Google, simple Google search on
Interest is great. Mhm.
meal prep and prepping and
Yeah.
prepping
Mhm.
for postpartum while you're in your pregnancy, which is something to think about and something that it can be overwhelming, but also will really set you up for success because paying attention to our nutrition, and we have all felt this as humans, when we put good, nutritious, um, you know, great quality food and nutrients into our body, we just feel better. We feel better. Um, Rather than when we know that we haven't been eating well, maybe we've been at a wedding, we've been vacationing, we
Mhm.
know how that feel like we're bloated, we're just like
Yeah.
energy fatigued, brain fog, we don't feel well.
Yeah.
So focusing on nutrition as much as possible. And also, and I keep bringing up support because I can't emphasize the importance of support enough.
So
Whether
true.
that are, your parents or your in-laws or your cousins or your friends, your community, your church, whoever that is for you. I
Mhm.
think it's really important to kind of tap into saying, don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for support in this time as you're healing from childbirth. Nutrition. So, trying to making it easy for you, trying to grab for an apple rather than a candy bar, and just trying to stock up in the best ways possible with highly nutritious foods. There's also a lot of resources as well for women who, again, are trying to prepare in their pregnancy for postpartum kind of meal delivery services or meal trains that friends can set up for you. But I just think in general, really focusing on protein intake is important as well, because again, we know protein and collagen can help with tissue repair and healing. And we all need that, whether it's a vaginal or C-section birth, because
Yes.
we have to heal from the inside out. And so
Mhm.
really trying to fuel up on things like, eggs or a handful of nuts, fruits, things like that, a protein shake, because things are going to be quick when you have your infant and you're wanting to pull your hair out. You want to just do simple things and set yourself up for success again. And, I remember in my postpartum period, I was very impatient about exercise because I love exercise for my mental health. And
Yeah.
I walked 2 miles the day that I was
Me too.
discharged from the hospital, which
I do
was
as well.
beyond silly because my poor little pelvic floor was like, what are you doing?
Yes.
And so just keeping in mind, like, it will come back, the energy will come back, but it takes time, and fueling yourself with great nutritious foods and depending on your support network are going to be key for you setting yourself up for success in healing from childbirth.
Agreed.
So
Thank you for that, Lacey.
yeah.
I wanted to quickly touch on, just because I'm a huge advocate for mental health.
Yes.
For new moms out there, we all have a lot going on in our day-to-day life, whether we've just had a baby or not. But we know that, there's a lot that we're trying to multitask and take on at one time. And just what are some effective ways that women can help to manage things like anxiety, and we're not talking about like clinical depression, but just overall sadness, ways that are natural and effective, because again, we've talked about this, we need a product. We'll
I
figure it
know.
out, but
We found a gap in the industry.
yes, we need to
Do.
do this. But in the meantime, something that women can go to, and they can do, um, to help to just stabilize their emotions during that time. Some things that
Yeah.
you think that would be
I think
helpful
that's
for that.
I think that's a great question and super important to bring up. So We know that the data is very clear with this too. Low social support was associated with an increased risk of postpartum anxiety, impaired parent and infant bonding attachment, and postpartum depression, higher risks of those things
Yes.
when we have low social support. So how can we really tap in and focus on putting our and prioritizing our mental health? Because if we all know this too, even in relationships, whether that's friendships or marriages or partnerships that we've had with people, if we're not taking care of ourselves, we're not going to be the best partner we can be. We're not going to be the best friend we can be. We're not going to be the best mom that we can be. And so how can we really support mental health and emotional well-being? So a couple of resources. There's also some online resources that I can refer to as well. But to start off with, I think it's really important. One of the most important things that I can't underscore more is setting yourself up for success as far as how your emotional health will be, because you don't know how it will be, but just kind of try to prepare for the worst, because you don't know as far as what support you're going to need. Think about it before you deliver your baby, because I think a lot of times women wait because they don't know. And then they're like, whoa, like this is a crash of hormones and mood swings and irritability and crying at the drop of a hat. And so how can we support these women? A couple things. There are some great mental health resources online that I can refer to in just a moment, but also really trying to remember that in order to be the best mom that we can be, we have to shower ourselves with the same compassion and love and patience, but also really leaning on your partner, your doula, your family, your parents, whoever, again, that support system is for you, and even preparing them ahead of time. I told my husband, I said, hey, listen, I don't know what it's going to look like postpartum. But I did know that I wanted to talk to him about my emotional health, because I just wasn't sure, just hearing from my friends how difficult it was going to be. And I said, nothing's personal in this time, I promise. I just give me some grace. And he really did. And even my OBGYN, who I established a fantastic rapport with and still to this day have, is really discussing concerns ahead of time. And at your postpartum visit, inevitably your provider will do a postnatal kind of depression scale and screening on you, but you can also actually simple Google search. It's called the Edinburgh Postnatal Depression Scale. And you can see if you're like, these kind of feelings of depression are creeping up, but are more than just postpartum blues, which are not supposed to last long. But as we all know, I think the majority of us actually go through postpartum depression and anxiety, whether it be one or the other or both.
100%.
Absolutely. And you've seen this too, Chanai, experience as a doula.
Right.
But it's so important to, again, lean on your support system. And then a couple of resources that I wanted to highlight. There's one called Postpartum Support International, and you can literally Google that, Postpartum Support International. And it's a website that is geared toward finding local support, which is always nice, I think.
Nice.
Well, yeah. So they're an expansive network of they offer different providers, different services, mental health, but also online support groups. I know for me, one of the most important things and the most helpful things for me postpartum with my mental health was actually joining a local moms group. And we would take stroller walks, and inevitably we would all stop every 5 minutes and tend to our crying babies.
That's so nice.
It was so nice. I mean, we were like a stroller brigade on the trail. But it was amazing because we were all there for each other, and we were all going through it, and we just looked at each other like, okay, this is real.
Because we're in this together.
We're for life. But it's awesome. So important to depend on your community and whoever you feel that support with. Again, whether that be your church or your community, your neighbors, your family. Some people who don't live close to their family, I think it's a really important and good idea to look at this Postpartum Support International, because they do really try to help hook you up with and connect with local resources. And then, there's, and you probably have a slew of information on this too, Chanai, that there's always there's I'm much more familiar with resources in California because this is where I'm based, but there's a postpartum support center that is all over Northern California, different locations for mental health providers that are specifically trained to help mamas in the postpartum period. And again, the postpartum period isn't just the first 12 weeks, moms, because the first 12 weeks, we're just trying to wrap our heads around what time of day it is. But they help me with that as well. And I'm sure you have more to add to that too, Chanai.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you for those resources. I'm sure that's going to be very helpful for a lot of people. Just to piggyback on that, I think it's important to just communication is really important. I know when I work with my mamas and and this is, before obviously the baby, but even still after, it's, doctors, what I have realized is your chart and the notes and all that are not always to the forefront. And so when they're, in an appointment at that time, it's kind of like they're focused on the here and the now.
Yes.
And it's important to backtrack with them, with your providers, so that they have an understanding of where your mental health was at. So, the moms that I've worked with, especially if I'm able to work with them earlier on, that's the first thing that I tell them to do. If you are someone that struggles with high anxiety and you've never mentioned that to your provider, mention it to your provider. That's the type of things, or even if it was something that was way in the past and you had depression and you think, it's no longer there, you bring it up, because those hormone changes your body will change and you may now have those symptoms that you didn't have for years. So
absolutely,
talking to the provider and just really getting them on track, and also having support from, if not a doula, other nurse practitioner or someone else in healthcare that you can talk to about things that have been recommended by your provider. Because it's always best if you can go the natural approach to things. I would, never recommend doing anything otherwise unless you have clinical depression, but it's good to try to do, like aromatherapy is great. We talked about that.
Yep.
Aromatherapy is really good. I still use aromatherapy all the time.
I love that.
Don't you? Isn't it so good?
It is. It's amazing.
And people are sensitive to smell sometimes, so it's good. They have a lot of places where you can just smell different ones and see. But I think lavender in general, even if you just use a little bit, you can kind of, depending on how strong you want it, but just to have it in the air in your home, you don't realize how calm of effect that can have on your nervous system.
Definitely.
So I think that those two things, and just keeping good communication with your provider, connecting with people that can help to support you, so that, because it can feel like a lonely time, especially if, you're having babies and your friends aren't having babies. And
true. It's so
you
true.
just feel like you're just in a completely different world than everyone else. So it's just nice to have support and have someone there to talk to and spend time with you. You want to, and also to those out there who have friends who have just had babies, go and check in on them. Check in on them. And just for their support. I mean, we're supporting the baby. We love the babies. We know it's about the baby, but mom tends to be eliminated from that process. Sometimes everyone's focused on the baby and the mom's just like,
right.
So give some support to her, take her favorite snacks, just go over there to hang out, and that means a lot to someone who's just had a baby.
It does. One of my really good girlfriends just had a baby, and one of my favorite things to do for my friends, and I didn't know this until I had a baby and realized how nice it was, is to drop off like a high protein meal for the family, but also delicious. Exactly. Be delicious. It doesn't have to be perfect, whether it's, enchiladas full of chicken and cheese and good protein, but just making sure that you're kind of loving on those friends and those mamas, because a lot of the time it is like, let me see the baby. How's the baby? But it's like, how's the mama? Because those changes are, as we know, just have to do with every part of us. So
it does. Yeah. Thank you for that. And thank you so much for all of your time and your insights today. It's been so fun. We have such a good rapport, so I can talk to you.
I know.
I can just sit here and chit chat with you forever.
so
But
true.
do you have, if you could give just some last closing words, advice for new
Yeah.
moms out there?
I would say to the mamas out there, don't be afraid to bring up your concerns to your healthcare provider
Mhm.
about how postpartum will be, whether that's just even a question, it doesn't have to be a concern, but hey, how can I be best successful in the postpartum period when I'm healing, whether that's your mental health that you want to focus on or your nutrition or, the physiological changes, the hair loss, whatever to you feels like something that you really want to talk about and address with your healthcare provider, don't hesitate. And I think it's just like Chanai said too, always getting a baseline and giving that history to your provider can be extremely beneficial. And then in addition to that, lean on your support system. It's so much
Yes.
easier said
Mhm.
than done, and it's hard to ask for help, but
Mhm.
people who love you really want to help you. And know that there's so many resources out there. A simple Google search or texting a friend or talking to a provider about how you can access those resources better is going to help you in the long term ultimately. And I wish all the moms out there the absolute best, because we've all been in the trenches, we know, and just know that you can empower yourself through educating yourself and through tapping into those resources early on.
Exactly. Yes, we love you. We support you.
Absolutely.
100%.
Yes.
Um, well, thank you so much. And thank you all for watching.
Thank you. It's
And
a pleasure
stay
being on Pulse.
tuned for another episode of the Pulse Podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of the New You Life Pulse podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Also, for more information, please visit our website, newyoulife.com. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode of the New You Life Pulse podcast.